Daniel, I'm Lee.
Hello.
Sanders, how are you?
Doing all right. How are
I
you?
haven't seen my friend Sam Irvin, but I figured since I'm here, I see that you had you got your panel, so I'm coming.
Oh,
And I'll let you
He's
say
been communicating with you, obviously, right?
yes.
we've never met, as I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to see you. Yeah.
Good to see you too.
You're here. You're here to see Sam.
I saw Sam at like 11, but I said, you're here at 1 in the same rooms.
Yeah.
I'll stick around.
It's great to have you.
It's great to put name to the face to the name.
Well, we can go ahead and get started here. I think everybody, were you in the last panel with Sam? I'm Ted Haycraft. I produce Indiana. I'm a big cinema buff and a big fan, and I'm a big fan of this guy. So when I saw that Daniel was going to be here this year, I told Anthony, who is one of the co-leaders of this convention, I go, please, can I do a Q&A with Daniel? Of course, you may regret it, but I've been a big fan of his. He runs a company called Ballyhoo Film Productions. Is that the official title?
Ballyhoo Motion Pictures.
Motion Pictures. See, I even got that wrong. I wrote it down here. Anyway, anytime a Ballyhoo logo comes up at the end of a production, I'm always excited. And I just love to sit here and just talk about all your career and what you did. One of the things I wanted to open up with, did you see, there's a big age gap here probably. Are you familiar with Robin Ness Productions?
To a degree, yes.
Yes. The reason I brought that up is because I would be at home watching a network movie, and they would end up early, and they had to fill the time, and they would be these little short films that were behind the scenes of a certain film that was coming out in the theater, usually at the time. And it was a Robin's Nest production that the guy got put with two ladies. And I always thought, that is so cool. I love that stuff. And then once I started, Cinema Fantastique magazine, not so much Famous Monsters, even though I would buy it occasionally, but it was mostly puns and silliness in it. The Cinema Fantastique was the real serious one that I would really just got into. So when Laserdisc came along, and DVDs, now Blu-rays and 4Ks, these extras that you are packed on, and that was like a godsend. I just thought they were the greatest thing to see in home movies and find out about this. Feel free, if it gets too loud, close the door.
Yeah, it's just so hot in here.
Yeah, that's the only thing I know. It's sort of testing.
It gets loud.
We can all just come close.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, we could.
So, anyway, so Daniel, I don't know, would you say you're one of the pioneers of this field? I mean, in terms of the DVD, Blu-ray, or would you say in terms of there's always a circle of group of people that show up, and I'm starting to recognize names. So when Daniel showed up at a convention one time, I go, I know you, in Valley, and you were at a table at Wonderfest.
Right.
So let's just go back to the beginning. First of all, where were you born? And where did you grow up?
So I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's my hometown. I grew up in a town called Fort, which was right next to Chickamauga Battlefield. I grew up with that history all around. My grandparents were very instrumental in raising me, and my grandmother was a genealogist. And so I spent a lot of time with her during the summer. I wasn't at school, traveling around, and digging through archives and basements of like local libraries and things like that in different towns that we traveled to, and walking through abandoned graveyards that time had forgotten, and I really fell in love with history through her, and also neighboring a prominent national battlefield that is commemorating a Civil War battle. I fell in love with history, and I fell in love with folklore through all the different people that she would encounter that would share stories about things, and I think through all of that, loving history and then falling in love with cinema.
How did you fall in love with cinema?
So I loved movies. So my father was a teenage father. I was born in '76.
Okay.
In 2 weeks I'm going to be 50.
Okay.
I was born in '76, and my dad was a teenage father. So when so that's why I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And so he would take me to movies. Probably movies I shouldn't be seeing all the time because he wanted to see them, and he's a teenage and an early 20 dad. He's like whatever. So I think through that I got to see a lot of different movies. But what really got me interested in filmmaking was when Superman the movie played on. HBO, the beginning of HBO. So this is like
because you were pretty young when
it was like '83-ish,
right?
And it was playing off of the next Superman movie that's coming out theatrically, and they did this big push, and they had this short that was about the making of Superman. And by that point, I'd watched Superman and loved Superman. Actually, while Star Wars. I was in that era of Star Wars and Jaws and Close Encounters were all movies that just made me fall in love with cinema. I fell in love with the idea of making movies and what it took to make movies because of Superman. And seeing that making of thing, I was like, oh my God, it's like, this is the coolest thing ever, that people just get to play and create and, and make things that could not happen in reality happen right before your eyes. I loved that, and then from that moment, every time I went to the library doing research with my grandmother, I would look for film books, like serious film books that would help me understand that process. And there weren't a lot of film books, certainly not in a library wherever we were. If it was in Chattanooga, if it was some town in Arkansas or whatever. There weren't a lot of film books, but the ones that I got my hands on, I really responded to and probably didn't return to the library. You mentioned Cinefantastique. Seeing the newsstands and seeing in just our local supermarket, if you could believe it, like Starlog and Cinefantastique, or in your just local grocery stores magazine rack. And so I started Cinefantastique and Starlog to a degree.
Starlog was like the Entertainment Tonight to.
But it did delve into stuff. But I started reading that, and I was like, oh, these are the people that made these, not the directors, but the special effects technicians and the model makers. And so I started reading about that, and I got into making Super 8 movies. First, by making stop motion stuff. And then starting to prepare write out stories and get neighborhood friends to participate. And I did the whole thing.
What was that? Making whole movies? What was this? High school, grade school?
So I started in elementary school making home movies. I know that because I have them. I keep.
We were talking about. We were just talking earlier. Sam did them too. We want to see Sam's early films. We're going to see your early films.
And I later. As I started doing bonus features and I was talking with directors and they would tell me about their stuff, I would push them and let me see it. And I was so successful at that I made them a part of the features. So when I was doing stuff with the Kyoto brothers for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I really pushed from hey, let me have access to the movies you made for your kids. I'm going to transfer them in 4K. We'll have them restored and transferred in 4K. We're going to include them on the release of Killer Clowns.
Were these stop action films that they
Yeah, all of them. They made, it was a combination of live action and stop motion stuff that they did. And those are on the 4K Blu-ray release of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, all of them, in their original unedited form. And I did a documentary with them talking about their experiences making those films. And then when I did From a Whisper to Scream with Jeff Burr, Jeff Burr was a friend of mine. He was in Dalton. I grew up in Chattanooga, and so I communicated a lot when I was middle school to high school. I started talking with him and communicating with him because he was local, and he was like, "Hey,
this is who? Jeff
Burr,
the guy who worked at Texas."
It's 3, yes,
yeah.
yes. So I formed a relationship with him and a friendship with him that dated back to dated up to his passing a couple of years back. And but when I did From Whisper to Scream, I made a documentary about him and his friends in Dalton, Georgia, making movies. movies, and I had all this material. And the cool thing with them is that they shot a lot of film footage in Super 8 and then in 16 when they got a little older. They shot a lot of film footage of just the town and different places. They worked at the movie theater, and so they shot footage of the movie theater. So when they talked about when they were kids going to that movie theater, I had footage of that movie theater.
That's excellent.
So I had all this stuff.
And it's a documentary record of
Of just a bunch of kids in a town that no one really recognized or would know outside of maybe people living in Georgia. But I loved that so much that I just started doing that with lots of filmmakers that I work with. I did a project with Rennie Harlan. I did a documentary about Cuthbert Island, and he started talking about his movies that he made overseas. And I was like, I used to have those, and so he got them out. And so it's like, it was like little things like that where you, hey, you know.
Can't make anything. I think the first time I ever saw some movies like that was Peter Jackson was.
Yeah, Peter Jackson did stuff that too.
Yeah, early on.
And Sam Raimi is notorious for his films that no one was going to be able to see.
But did you have to twist their arms to get them?
Not the ones that were successful. Yeah, not the ones that were successful, but the ones that not the ones that I was able to get access to and do something with.
Right.
But yeah, but that
So
roundabout way that that's kind of how I fell in love, discovered filmmaking, and.
But you're reading about it. You're making you're making your movies and stuff like this. But was the goal at this point, or I mean, not that you had a goal, or just you were, this is just what you love to do, was it just to make movies, not so specifically making of movies, but just make movies?
I knew that in some capacity I wanted to be involved in filming, one way or the other. I stumbled into documentary work. I loved watching. Like you mentioned, the television.
The Robin's Nest stuff.
Yeah, the Robin's Nest. So I did see stuff like let's see, the little making of thing for Meteor that was done for AIP. The AIP is a budget movie that was kind of a disaster. And also Amityville Horror. They did one for Amityville Horror when it came out, but when it started playing on HBO, they would play that.
HBO would use a lot of those stuff. Yeah.
And so I saw stuff like that.
And you're a child of cable and VA, and how soon?
Not quite. I mean, I would say I'm a child of the VHS era, but that wasn't readily available for our income bracket.
And they were so expensive. They were very expensive, and you had to. I remember you had to go to pay for a rental, the membership.
And it was a daily rental.
Yeah.
When movies, it was 24 hours. You checked out the movie 24 hours from when you checked it out. It had to be returned by that date because. They were so expensive, they were in such limited supply, and there was the only way you could guarantee everyone an opportunity to be able to rent it. And if it didn't do that, I don't think VHS would have taken off because it needed that instant access to the things you wanted to sustain itself. Otherwise, people still waiting on Raiders of the Lost Ark. When speaking of that movie, when my grandparents purchased VCR, that was the movie that came with it. It came with a free movie, and it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. So there was the only movie we had. So I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark all the time.
How long did it hold up?
Yeah, your friends come over. Let's watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's like because that's all we got. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is great.
Well, we learned to, we were in college, I was in college from 77 to 81, and we had access to a VCR on campus,
right.
And another friend had a VCR, and we go, we can hook these two up, and we rent a movie, and we can make our own copies. So we were making copies left and right of our own library at that time.
Yeah,
so that was a big deal.
It's interesting because we always equate like that revolution of happening more in the 80s, like the early part of the 80s into the middle part of the 80s. It really took off, but actually it was happening in the 70s. It's just it was in just smaller markets, and it was in income brackets that didn't work for everybody.
You would appreciate this. In college, I helped out on the film series all 4 years, and I was in charge of it last year. And by the end of my senior year, I was working at a TV station. I started down in the film room, hot spicing the film, and commercial breaks and stuff. And we would take the films from the campus and the engineer would hook up the VCR to the teleceive, and we'd
Oh,
make
yeah.
her.
There you go.
So we did a Rocky Horror Picture print, a copy, and I think that thing got bootlegged. I think everybody in those guys had a copy of Rocky Horror at one point because of that. It spread out like a virus. But so, college, did you go to college?
Yeah, so I went away to school, and I think in that process, I made a short, and it was entered into a competition through the school, and it got me an internship on a TV show and or a TV series that was filming. Grunt job. It wasn't anything special, nothing special at all. And I worked really hard on that, and I ended up making enough of an impression that I quit school because I was offered a job to work on as a grip, and so I started doing that as work. And I think in that world, I learned a lot about the mechanics of film production, kind of from the bottom up. And I asked a lot of questions. I kept my eyes open to every single job that was going on, and kind of fell in love with the chaos of it. But in that, I started getting, not gonna say bored. It was just like I wanted to make stuff, or at least be more on the creative side involved in making something. And so I started making a documentary, kind of on the weekends, or travel around on my vacation time.
And why documentaries of fiction?
I just, because a lot of the people I knew were trying to make films, they're trying to make a short film or whatever. And when you make a movie, it depends on the graces, the good graces of all your friends. And also it really depends on them sharing the passion and devotion that you had.
Yeah.
And I saw every project of theirs fall apart where, we're going to make a short, and we're all friends get together, and we're all help each other and everything else. And the first 2 or 3 days kind of work fine, but then your crew and your cast start to trail off, and they're like not as committed to this dream of yours. And I knew that if I made a documentary, just like when I was a kid, I can make a stop motion movie as opposed to getting my neighborhood friends involved, because they will show up. First hour or two, they're really enthusiastic, and they realize that it's work and it takes patience.
Tedious at times.
They start to lose interest. And so I thought if I made a documentary, it could just be me. I could just, I know how to shoot because I asked, cinematographers all these questions, and I've been shooting stuff since I was a kid. And I knew how to edit because I was doing that, I guess as a hobby, but also I learned in school. But as a hobby, I would edit things and play around with things, mostly like editing trailers. I loved how trailers were edited, and I thought if I could master editing a trailer, I could master editing anything. And
Do you make fake trailers?
I am, all the time. So I was in that process of doing that type of work when I thought, well, if I made a documentary, what do I make a documentary about? Anything. I loved supernatural documentaries. I loved In Search Of. I watched In Search Of all the time, and certainly once Unsolved Mysteries came out, I watched Unsolved Mysteries a lot, especially with my grandmother. I really loved Unsolved Mysteries. And I loved paranormal documentaries that would pop up.
Would you have wanted to maybe get a job on that show?
Yeah. So at first I was thinking, I want to find something really unique, some kind of unique something that's happened across the United States that would be paranormal based, that would be an interesting subject, and I'll do that. And
Make that as a resume?
and so I read all these different stories, different books, did a lot of research, and I found something that I was interested in. And at about the same time, I was reading through old film magazines, and I came across a story about these Mexican horror films that were imported by this guy named K. Gordon Murray. And I remember reading the article, and I remember seeing some of his stuff that played on television as these random packages. And
The Santa Claus movie.
the Santa Claus one was the main one.
You
I
might have
remember
seen it growing
it played on on one of our local stations had a kind of like a, I want to say like a sister station. It was like a step-brother, step-sister station. It was like they played shows that weren't very successful and movies that most people wouldn't tune into. But for some reason, they had to keep a continuous stream of some kind of content playing on the channel.
Yeah.
And so they played the Keyboard Mary Santa Claus film and movies like Christmas is Almost Wasn't and Santa Claus and Ice Cream Bunny and stuff like that. They played those kinds of stuff.
If you see one of them, don't forget it. Yeah.
So I remember seeing as a kid, I was like, huh. So the story I was interested in, this paranormal story, took place in Illinois, in a town that was just south of this other town called Bloomington, Illinois. And Bloomington, Illinois was where Keyboard Mary was born. And so I thought, well, we'll find out a little bit more about this Keyboard Mary guy. Because we're going to do a documentary. You're not going to do a documentary about, well, at least for me, I was going to do a documentary about someone that was, information was readily available. Just another documentary about whoever, like Orson Welles or whatever. So I thought I'd do something really obscure. And if I did something really obscure, it's going to be kind of like the mystery of this person. I'm going to find out who this person is, and I'm going to take the same approach as In Search Of. But I'm going to do it about a film personality, a person that was just a distributor and a producer. And his work was so quirky enough and kind of surreally, I want to say like folk-like. It was almost like it could have easily been a myth or folklore in the cinematic community. Who is this guy? Because nothing exists. And the things that were written about him, I proved all mostly false. Because no one was like boots on the ground, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find the story. So I decided when I was going to this one town where this paranormal event happened, or a strange event happened, I'm going to drive 2 hours north to this other town and find out who this guy is. And that's what I did. And in that, and I don't know if any of here create anything, but your beginnings are probably your best work because it's so raw. It's so like you're seeing like the wheels turning, you're experimenting, and everything else. I've been doing this so long now. It's just kind of like I could make, if a company said, hey, do this, I could probably do it in my sleep. But that's a horrible way of looking at it. What I want to do is create and change up things and do whatever. So in the beginning, I was just thinking, I'm not going to create a documentary just like anything else. I'm going to merge all these different things that I love into something that will come off as new or inventive. And that.
What year was this event?
So it's like mid-2000, maybe 2006.
2006?
Yeah.
Now, where were we in the home video market at that time?
So at this point, DVD is incredibly successful.
Right. So they're
and you're about to enter that phase of like the Blu-ray HD DVD kind of world stuff.
So I guess what I'm getting at is that where were the features?
You could buy these at Best Buy.
Yeah, the features. They were mostly just, a lot of it was just EPKs.
No. There was features. By that point, you had certain things popping up. You had like the Anchor Bay editions were doing great. They were making all kinds of great stuff for the Anchor Bay editions.
And some of that stuff was coming out in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
The studios were putting out.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a heyday of Blockbuster.
And I mean, most of the
Those
stuff.
DVD.
So was there anybody that you saw the DVDs and go, ooh, I can do that, or I can do
No,
that?
I actually, because I watched as much making of stuff as I could, there was documentaries. Like, for instance, I ended up working with Nick Redman years later, but I mean, I watched his doc that he did for Wild Bunch. And he also subsequently did some other Technopop related stuff. And so I watched stuff like that. I had seen, and there were documentaries that were made for things. There was the documentary that was made about the making of Gone with the Wind. And so I mean, I watched everything that could exist, but I wasn't
Still wasn't convinced that.
I wasn't looking at it like, that's the type of thing, but those were the format
Right.
that I knew existed, and I knew that was the language in which I was gonna have to adapt myself to. But I wanted to do something quirkier. Because I thought, the quirkier the story, the quirkier way I could make it, the more likely I could create something that was kind of culty. I wasn't interested in creating something, because I wasn't going to make a documentary that was going to be hugely successful. It was not going to happen. And I embraced that that was not the objective. The objective was to practice, to make something and practice. And I've done a few lectures at schools where they ask, how would you start? And I was like, you start now, and you just make stuff. Make it for you. Just make stuff. Understand this language, and just exercise the use of that language. It's gonna suck. It's gonna not work. You're gonna shoot something out of focus. You're gonna have bad sound. You just do it. And then as you're doing it, start thinking of what you want to say, and then start understanding how you want to say it. And it's not going to communicate well, and you're going to show it to friends or family, and they're going to think, this is weird. I don't understand. What are you trying to say? And through that, you're going to understand what they need from you to understand what you want to say. And it's just ongoing. But I learned that by being a silly little kid that wanted to basically imitate the things I loved from other movies by reproducing them, and then showing them to my friends and family, and watching how they thought this sucked. And they're like, well, why did it suck? Or why don't you understand that? I was like, I thought I conveyed exactly what the plot was, and they're like, we just don't get it. And so then you ask, okay, I get it. What do you not get? And you really listen, and then you try to make another one, and you take that advice, like, oh, that's how you make something.
So this is the K. Gordon Murray. Did you go through on that? Did you do a doc on that?
Yeah, I did, and I shelved it because well, two things. It wouldn't happen now, and I've since helped that studio. There was a Mexican studio that was very litigious, and they were very concerned about footage I was using, and they had already gone after Something Weird Video for putting out releases of these films, and I was seeking assistance from Something Weird, and I guess just the trail kind of went back to me, and I was at this point. It served its purpose for me, which was I got practice, and I kind of tried to understand how to do that type of work, and it got me work because.
Did you show it to people?
I showed it to. So in the process of doing that, I did a documentary about the making of Stanley with William Griffith, who was the person I interviewed for the K. Gordon Murray documentary. I really liked him, and I liked his story, and we got to talking, and I was like, well, this company reached out to him and said, hey, we're going to put out Stanley, we want to do an interview with you.
Is it the Snake movie?
Yeah, and so Bill Griffith called me and said, hey, this company's putting out Stanley, do you want to come interview me? And so I was like, sure. So I went and interviewed him, and then I said, I'd like to make a doc about this. Let's see if they'll buy into it. And they did, and it paid me like nothing. And I made it, and at the time, Shout Factory was just coming into its own, and they bought the license for Mystery Science Theater 2000. And they knew the people that I made the Stanley thing for, and they knew I was working on this K. Gordon Murray thing because I heavily talked about it all the time. I went to conventions and talked about it. I was just talking about it. Because I thought if I created this word of mouth around the project, that it was better than the project existing. because, I mean, it wasn't fake, it wasn't a phony project, because I was working on it, I was doing it, but it got all these people talking about this project and wanting to see it. And I made trailers for it, and I showed clips for it, but Shout Factory was putting out some Mystery Science Theater titles, and a couple of them were Gordon Murray titles. So I put together docs for that. They liked that, and the people that bought the Mystery Science Theater sets thought this was hilarious because I was taking a movie that most people consider to be bad, and I was giving it this Criterion treatment. I wasn't making fun of it. I was like seriously showing what this is the story behind this movie.
And that was been one of the most frustrating things I would love to have your documentaries of Mystery Science Theater all collected singularly, because I'm not really a big fan of Mystery Science itself, because I don't sit there and make fun of it. I know a lot of people love doing that, but I love the docs on it, because you were serious and you were treating these things with love and if they deserve respect, but I've always so there. I mean, those boxes are littered with your. I mean, how many are
there's
there?
a lot, and I have since gone through and picked like my favorites, and I was thinking, well, I'm gonna re-edit these and not make them Mystery Science Theater centric, like
Do you have ownership of them still?
Yeah, of the docs, yeah. But like revamp them and create kind of this like best of thing.
I would love that.
Because it's coming up, but it was 20 years from when I started doing things under Ballyhoo as a name.
So how do you know about the Ballyhoo? What since we're at that?
There's a Ballyhoo, this is another long story.
It's okay.
So I grew up across from an amusement park that's owned by carnival people. It sounds derogatory, but it was owned by people that owned the traveling show. They owned this amusement park and traveling show. And in the winter months, when that carnival was not traveling, some of their buses and trailers and everything else would reside in the parking lot of this amusement park, and they would stay like a trailer park, And my grandmother would sit in her retirement years. She would sit for extra money. She had a background sitting with sick people or something like that, and so she would sit with the mother, the ill mother of this couple that owns these carnivals. It was a family kind of business, and so when she would sit for them, I would occasionally go over, because this is kind of cool. It's an amusement park that's closed for the season, and the house is a part of the amusement park. It's on the property of the amusement park. I could walk around this amusement park and watch different people, doing maintenance on rides or whatever. And they had like an arcade there, and sometimes they would turn on the arcade so I could play some games while, whatever. And but there were also a lot of circus and carnival people there, and I would listen to their stories, and I loved that era of I love the early the late 1800 to the early 1900 carnival era of traveling shows and stuff. And one of the buses or trailers had the word Ballyhoo on it, and I love that word, and I'd asked as a kid, what that word meant, and I always thought that word was so awesome. And so I knew that if I was going to create a company, even from when I was a kid, if I was going to create a company, I thought Ballyhoo would probably be the name. I like the name Ballyhoo, and I thought if I Ballyhoo Motion Pictures means that I'm ballyhooing motion pictures. So that was how I came up with that. My logo is a different story. Yeah. So the first William Castle and first Vincent Price experience I had as a kid was watching House on Haunted Hill, and it was playing at midnight, and I was in my grandparents' living room, and I was going to sit up and wait to watch this at midnight. It was like on a Saturday, and I fell asleep in the floor. I had a blanket, a pillow, waiting. I fell asleep on the floor. The TV is on, and the volume's on. And anyone that's seen that film, it starts with a scream. It's very loud, and then woo, all this stuff. And it woke me up. I mean, I was like, what was that? And I'm looking at this blank screen, because that's what it is, it's a blank screen with all these sounds, and then all of a sudden, there's this, it looks like a disembodied head. It's coming towards you, and it starts, and I was hooked on that movie. And I stayed up watching it. I was just in it. And so I've always loved that movie. It's my favorite Ben Surprise movie. It's my favorite William Castle movie, even though I respect the fact that those are not the best of either person. But it's my favorite. And so I was thinking when I had a logo at Ballyhoo, and I said, well, I want it to be about celebrating, but also I want to celebrate showmanship. And I was like, well, William Castle, why not? And then I thought, oh, this is great. So the same scream that woke me up is going to be the scream that I'm giving to the people that are watching the dog, saying, wake up. I'm about to show you something that you may love. And so I kind of did this whole little thing. And that was my...
So were you originally putting it on the front of the dogs?
Yeah, I started at the beginning putting it on the front because I wanted people to know.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just good marketing, but I also really liked the idea of it. And so if I ever make a document, like a feature doc, I still put it on the front. And then if it's shorter featurettes, I put it in the back because, it's fine. I don't need to let you know that I made this, it's fine. But when it's a longer production, any longer production, if it's if it's 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, it will always have my logo at the front of it. And I've had to fight clients sometimes on that because it makes it seem like when you read reviews, they'll say Shout Factory made this great documentary. I said, Shout Factory did nothing except hire me to do it. It's like
and they didn't pay you that much either.
Yeah, but they didn't make the documentary. They said, will you make something? And I made a documentary. I mean, it was really that simple. So that was one thing, which is kind of.
So what was the turning point where we know you, Daniel Griffith, we know now with the Ballyhoo Film Company, and you doing these. When did that happen? When did that stock into place? What was the unseen Cable Gordon Murray thing? Was that kind of the buzz on that?
Yeah,
Jobs.
Yeah.
And you stayed on that track for the most part. I mean, are you still wanting to?
So the Mystery Science Theater thing helped a lot because people found that interesting. So like, well, if they found it interesting, what else are you going to do? What else you have? And so I followed the Santa Claus one up with a BC Upper Flats one, and I had one, and I was doing something fun with these. Like BC Upper Flats, if you remember, or if you don't remember, I'm going to remind you. The film has this narration that is very ponderous. It's sort of trying to be poetic, and it's narrated by the director, Coleman Francis. And so throughout the film, he's just saying these random things, and it somehow ties together to this story about this officer that stumbles upon like a testing ground for a nuclear bomb and ends up being the beast of the Upper Flats. And so through that story arc, I just thought it'd be funny to make a documentary where everybody talking on camera or talking off camera, and when I cut to them, they're not saying anything. It's just them on camera with this narrator that's sort of being ponderous and poetic, talking about the making of BC Upper Flats. I just thought that was funny. And doing the Mystery Science Theater stuff allowed me to be a little funny. And so I thought, well, let's make a documentary that mirrors the style of BC Upper Flats by doing this. Because when Coleman Francis made the movie, he shot all of the dialogue and everything else was all done in post. So he creatively shot things that were basically reaction shots, where if a person came up to the car and was talking to you, the person talking was cut off by the top of the car, and he's like, so you better be, good driving this road, don't speed again, or whatever. And then when it cut to the person talking that's in the car, it would be like a reverse, but it would be the back of their head, okay, officer, I won't see you later, but you never saw anyone talking. And that way he could manipulate the story however he wanted in post by doing, voice. So it's almost like he said, I don't really have a script I like, but I have all these scenes I like. I'm just going to shoot all those scenes, and I'll worry about the script later. And so I just thought that would be funny, is to, every time, so Larry Blameyer or Bob Burns or whoever is on camera, I shot scenes of them just sitting there like they're nodding, and, like this, and then I put the narration over those scenes, and then would cut to them off camera talking. So I just thought it was funny.
Did you think it worked?
I don't know if it worked, but I just thought, I don't know if people. I think people might have got it.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was so funny. To me, it was funny.
So do you approach? Is that a main approach for you? Is to try to reflect maybe the movie itself in the making of the doc? If you can.
I like that with Mystery Science Theater because I thought it fit. I liked kind of experimenting with that.
Yeah.
But a lot of my earlier stuff, I really was just trying to figure out some fun way of doing it.
Fun way to do it, yeah.
I don't know if it always worked, but.
Well, I was going to say that I think it seems like it'd be frustrating working in this field. Is how do you be inventive? How do you make this fun instead of just some talking heads and some clips?
So okay, that's so. Following up with that, another thing I did for Mystery Science Theater was like a Jam Handy documentary. But I was thinking, well, if Jam Handy is known
tell us who Jam Handy.
Jam Handy was known, his organization was known for making all these different educational shorts. And a lot of those educational shorts were riffed on Mystery Science Theater. And so I thought, well, this would be funny. Why don't we make an educational short about Jam Handy? And that way we're making an educational short. And so I'm friends with Larry Blameyer, and I think Larry Blameyer has this really great sense of humor. And so I thought, let's do this like setup.
Was this after he did his own film?
Yeah. So we did this setup where Larry Blameyer would be playing a lineman, like a utility lineman, right? But it was a lineman that also was teaching this kid who didn't know who Jam Handy was, who was being teased by his friends. He was trying to teach this kid who Jam Handy is, so he won't be teased by kids anymore. And he talks about lines of communication because that's what Jam Handy was doing. It was about communication, lines of communication. Lines of communication.
Physical lines.
And so he comes into this locker room where this kid is all upset, and he's like, Tommy, what's wrong? And it's done very much like a Jam Handy short. So I blocked and shot every scene where it would play out in a master, and when it would cut to like a close-up, it was these very striking Dutch angles that just made the Jam Handy shorts that much more interesting when they were doing it. It's like, wow, they're trying to do these different things. It's like they're selling tires for Chevrolet, but they're going to do these wild little things. So I thought, well, this would be kind of fun. We'll do these little like angles and stuff. And I made it where Larry, every piece of information he needed to help illustrate the story to young Tommy about who Jam Handy was readily available and accessible within that locker room. So he's like, there's a book about that, Tommy. And he walks over to a locker and opens it up, and here's the book. It says right here that, blah, blah. And it's done just like that. It's all in black and white. And then...
Did you put scratches on it? Or
Yes, I did. It's got grain. It's got skip frames. I just thought it was kind of like so we found this one. And he would walk from there, like everything was a cue, and the music was all like De Wolf, their library's music cues that were used in those same shorts. And so every cue would be a musical cue. So like if he was going to walk from one place to another, there was a musical cue. That's the only time there was music. And so he's like, hey, Tommy, let's see what's loaded up on that projector. He walks over to the projector and like turns it on, and it's an interview with the actual Jam Handy that was filmed. And we did this little thing, and we just thought it was hilarious. It's like it's a documentary about Jam Handy where a guy is teaching a kid about Jam Handy by using a film to a filmed interview of Jam Handy, and we were like drawing this little like square, like we're just going around this circle. And
do you storyboard for all of this? Are you a storyboard person?
Yeah, I kind of sketched out how I wanted to do, mainly how I wanted the angles and how I wanted everything to be. But we built this little set and on this small stage, a sound stage, and was using all these props from a local theater department. And it was really fun. I thought it was hilarious because it was meta within meta within meta, and I thought people are going to think this is really funny. And people were like, "What the hell is this?" It was when I would read the reviews on the thing, I'm like, I can't wait to see what people are going to think. Wow, this is a cool Jam Handy documentary because it's not like a talking head thing. And they're like, there's this weird thing with Larry Blameyer about Jam Handy, and it's like, and the thing that was funny is that Larry Blameyer plays two characters because the interviewer for Jam Handy, what it is, I cut to Larry as the interviewer instead of the original interviewer, and Larry is asking questions of Jam Handy, but they're kind of he's kind of like the world's worst interviewer.
Yeah.
Because the answers that Jam Handy gave were like the answers that you never wanted to, like, no, really, tell me something. Don't just like, no, that's right, that's exactly right, that's what I did. We did that. You know, it's like, no, but, so I just like this, Larry Blackmeyer's character is like trying to get good answers, and then it would cut to like different things, but when it would go to a projector, it would be playing the doc, and then, you know, and I just thought that was funny.
Have you heard any review or anybody that comes in and says, oh, I got it, that's really funny?
No, I mean, I've played it like a couple times in front of like groups of people, and I think they laughed okay. You know, Larry Blameyer's humor, I think, is ingenious, but it takes, what's the best way of saying this? It's all at once like deep and also juvenile, like kind of silly. But it's like it's very smart, but very silly. And sometimes people don't respond.
Getting smart about being silly.
But I mean, I grew up with apart from like reruns of like or airings of like Marx Brothers movies and a lot of Three Stooges. But I also, you know, grew up with like Airplane. And so those types of, I think, are very smart. It's very smart humor. It's pretty awesome, but it's also kind of juvenile at the same time. So, and I think Larry is in that world, and I watch it even now, and I think it's hilarious because it's just weird.
We're getting close. I'm running out of time here. I got a few just real quick questions with maybe a quick answer. What's your favorite? Lightning round, exactly. Your favorite Ballyhoo production? Do you have one, or you guys are all do you have the answer like, or they're all my babies and I can't, you know?
I think I said this. I've never made anything that I'm 100% proud of.
Right.
I've never nothing. I can't find the one thing where even when I look back and I think, wow, that was actually okay.
You have a favorite that maybe 6.
But I mean, I think it's a favorite based on the project. So I really loved working on the Twilight Zone project because I love Twilight Zone. Growing up, loved Twilight Zone, and I watched several interviews as a kid with Rod Serling, and I just thought he was an amazing person. He just seemed like a really amazing guy, and so when I did that, I was like, I really want to get into like his shoes. Like really, I want to play in the park that he played in as a kid. I want to go to his home. I want to go to his high school. I want to go to where he went to college. And so I did that. I made this whole journey of going to all these places and filming interviews with like his childhood friends and filming interviews with people that are now faculty at the school that know a lot about the history of that school and Rod Serling was involved with the school. So I did all that and went to his home. I went to in his basement where his office was when he passed, so like his last office, I guess. And really immersed myself in his life and wanted to tell that story. And I loved working on that because I love the idea of, dating back to like traveling with my grandmother and like touching history, like really connecting to it. It's a weird thing, I get made fun of all the time, but I got documents from this one archive, and it had correspondence from Joan Crawford, and it was like, now I don't know if she hand wrote this correspondence or some lackey did, but she signed it. But I'm sure she held it and made sure it's what she wanted. But it's like you're touching it, and like Joan Crawford touched this. She, if she didn't put it in an envelope, she at least held it, proofread it, or made sure it's what she wanted and signed it. So, but there's something cool about.
Oh yeah.
This is the closest I'll ever get to Joan Crawford. And I think that's neat. So when you have an opportunity to really, do that, that's one thing I love about doing documentaries. It's the people that you meet, the people you work with on those projects, and then what you have access to and what you find.
Yeah.
So,
So
Twilight Zone and probably Waterworld, because I wanted to do a documentary about Waterworld, or someone to do a documentary about Waterworld, since before the movie came out in the theater, because I was a projectionist at a movie theater, and I worked full-time while I was in high school there, and I would always read Box Office Magazine, and I was always reading about the problems with this movie. And when I saw the teaser trailer of that film attached to the Van Damme Street Fighter film, I was like, this looks great. I don't understand why Box Office and Variety and all these magazines, periodicals are dogging this movie. It looks really fun. And so I was just really interested in it. From that moment, I was just like, I want to find out more. And so when I had the opportunity to make a doc about it, I was really, really excited. So.
What about what's been the hardest one you've ever done? The most difficult one that you've done? Is there one that is like, wow, I really got through that one, or it was really tough?
When I did the From Whisper to Screen doc with Jeff, it's because I was From a Whisper to a Scream. So it was filmed in Dalton. It was Jeff's first feature film, and when I was making that with him, it was so important to him that all these things get said, all these things, but he trusted me. He knew that to him, I guess I was good at what I did. So he trusted me with crafting it, but he was very involved.
And that was too much control for you?
No, I welcomed it. It was great because I got to almost have the experience of being an editor for a director. The director is trusting the editor to put together the film that they're wanting, but they're watching it and be like, let's tweak this here, or let's add more of this. Oh, you cut out that story that so-and-so said, but no, we got to put that story back in. And I'm like, yeah, but it slows it down, it takes it in a different direction. It's like, you'll figure it out. And so I do like various versions of like, okay, how am I going to wedge this in? Because I'm building this pacing and this momentum leading up to something. Then he wants to sidestep over to this. So I had to figure out a way to sidestep because it was so important. And so that was hard, and it took a long time. And both of us put kind of our relationship and reputation with this one distributor, we put it on the line. And the ramifications of that last to this day. It's really, I don't do anything for the producer that was responsible for that. And when I have done it, I can tell it's out of reluctance. But it was important to him. It bothered me a little bit that I was putting so much on the line, but I recognized that it was important to him. And I think I was in the service of him. It was his story. And so whatever I had to do to make that work.
What about you? Do you have a dream one? One that you really, your white whale that you're still, of course, you know, I know there's a lot of competition out there, and there's a lot of gobbledygook, things get gobbled up all the time. I don't know if there's anything out there that you're just still like, wow, I really want to get that one. I wanna get
Yeah.
that one.
So I have like 10 documentaries I want to make before I die. And I've made a couple of them. Waterworld was one. Doom was one.
Which version?
Yeah, the David Lynch thing. Making that doc, that was one. That was like a cross the
You got a call from Denis I'll do the extra.
I wish.
This is what
I would really, I'd love to do a doc about Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy, because there's not really a lot
I
on
noticed
it.
you had a lot of buttons for sale.
I love that movie, and I love it for what it tried to do.
What do you make of those wonky things he's done to keep the copyright?
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, it is. Strange.
But I think it's part of a good story.
Yeah.
This is a guy that is holding true so much to the possibility of being able to do something with this, that he's like, no, it's just not the right time. It's just not the right time, but we're going to get something out there so I can keep owning it.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. I've tried to go to him and say, I've got the perfect way to show that you're doing something continuously with the property. Let's make a documentary. And
You got a response?
yeah, I never did anything.
Have you heard from them, the Warren's people?
I mean, I've heard from, I guess the program responds. Oh, we have a lot of people talking about that. And it's like, I mean,
It's too bad. I mean,
it,
because he's one of those filmmakers that he's frustrating. I'm a big fan of his stuff, and he doesn't do many extras for a lot of his films. The Reds have a nice,
yeah.
a decent one.
Well, maybe he's a really
Private.
good filmmaker.
And a private guy.
Yeah,
Very private. Yeah, and he's always hesitant. He just wants
Well,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
it's interesting that he did the film where he played Hughes, because
If I got it done, but yeah, nobody saw it.
But I think it's interesting that he did that, because he's a little bit like him.
Yeah.
In the sense that he's very private and pretty controversial, and also, I mean, he's so, so prejudiced of what other people are doing in the world that he's interested in doing something.
Yeah.
He's like very protective of it.
And he
And,
stored his urine in jars.
And,
And he stored his urine in jars.
yeah, yes. But yeah, but yeah, doing Dick Tracy would be a lot of fun. I think that would be a blast. There's early stuff. I really wanted to do a documentary about the making of Birth of a Nation, because I feel like it's a movie that if you did a honest documentary about it, you can kind of.
It almost needs one.
You can kind of celebrate it and understand it, but also recognize what it is. But I feel like it gets overshadowed. Its accomplishment gets overshadowed by the content, and I feel like the content is inexcusable, certainly in today's time.
Yes. Yeah.
But I feel like there's a story there, and I tried really hard to do that. I had a really good idea of how to do it, and I tried to get big name people to support that idea, and I actually got a meeting with the handler of one of them and explained it. But they came down to them asking a question: do you think that this film needs to be forgotten? Should just go off? And I said no, and they said, do you think it's racist? And I was like, as a person trying to tell the story, I don't think it's right for me to have that conclusion. I think to me, I feel like if I'm true to it, then people will draw the conclusion that they need to, and that was it.
Well, we're pretty much out of time. I had another question was ones you wish you could have done. I guess is there one that you just, oh gosh, I should have done that one. Or do you want to share that?
That I shouldn't have done?
Yeah, that you wanted, the ones that you could have done that was done by someone else, you know. Or do that?
I guess in a lot of ways, it's like you want to do something, like, you know, like anyone, you want to do something because you love it, but you're just kind of happy that someone's doing it.
Yeah.
I think earlier on, I might have been like, oh, I think I could have done a better job than that, but, I wish I was the one doing it, I have all these neat ideas. But in the end, no. There's one on the 10 that I came close to, but I think the director ended up being frustrated because of nothing to do with necessarily what I did. It's more of what the distributor of a movie of his that I did work for did. But I really wanted to do a documentary about V, the miniseries.
Oh.
And well, the miniseries and the final battle. But I wanted to do a documentary about that, but use that as an excuse to talk about the event series as well. And the way I was going to do it was beginning with a news broadcast, and in that news broadcast, they're talking about it's the anniversary of the V miniseries, and you know, we're going to talk with so and so, the creator of this, about this, blah blah blah, and a very generic kind of little puff news special piece, and all of a sudden there's an explosion off camera, and you hear all this like scurrying and gunfire and everything else, and a resistance leader comes up and is holding the anchor and saying what they're telling you is not true. They're you know, they're forming like a whole story based upon lies or whatever, and fills their face and pushes and they take them away. And the person on camera says, "Want to know the real story about this is this," and they say, "Play the tape," and they play the tape, and it's the document. And I just thought that would be so funny. And it would be kind of it would be embracing something at the same time that you're trying to also educate someone about it. And I just thought it would be fun.
When you were saying that, it reminded me of Disclosure Day.
Any questions? So since we're out of time, anybody have a question for Daniel? Okay. Well, hey man, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Oh, no.
Let's all give a hand. He's got a table. You have a table in the vendor's room. He's got all kinds of stuff. My first purchase of the weekend was from at his table, so he's got some good stuff there. And I had much more to go over. I was going to go through all your ones you have that are so interesting. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, welcome.
You're wonderful.
You're great.
Thanks.
No, we didn't know we were gonna be that late, sorry.
Oh.